how hard can it be to make smoked tofu? Very much a facetious comment, did not think anything of it. I was really hungry on the way home from the grocery store. I tore it open and I ate it in the car. Our product has to remain between 1 and 4 degrees. Any colder, it freezes. Any warmer, it gets rejected at the dock. I'm really glad that I listened to my own instincts as opposed to industry norm. Sometimes you kind of have to go against the grain a little bit. It would be a disservice to ourselves and to our customer to push more product than the store can handle. A lot of people have amazing ideas, but it's the ones that are in this industry have executed on it.
Miki, thanks a lot for coming on the Shelf to Scale podcast. It's great to have you here.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Definitely. As someone that's a massive tofu fan, I'm excited to chat today about oomé. Maybe let's start off with the origin story. How did the idea come up? Like let's go right to like the first month or so of, like, not even when the product launched, but like when you were kind of percolating on the idea per se.
Yeah, it's definitely a very personal story. So growing up, food was always something that my whole family was very passionate about. My dad used to say that he lives to eat and doesn't eat to live. And he was in the food business and was very passionate about using his smoker. He would tinker with all different types of animal-based proteins, actually coming up with his latest and greatest. And then in 2020, he actually got into a very significant accident. And we found that, he was in the hospital for an extended period of time. And the routine suddenly became, my sister and I conversing about like, what should we cook to prep dinner for our respective families and our little children, leave that at home, and then go and support my mom at the hospital. And that was our routine for about 4 months. And it's like, protein is just so critical. And we were like, where did smoked tofu go? It's the pandemic. Some things were shorted, couldn't find it. And I had my dad's smoker and I'm like, well, what if, how hard can it be to make smoked tofu? Very much a facetious comment, did not think anything of it. And then he passed away in November 2020. And then I could not get that idea out of my head, not only to sort of pay homage to him, but like kind of take a chance on myself. I was in a bit of a rut career-wise to take that leap of faith and do something that I really admired because my father was a self-made entrepreneur and I was always very risk averse that way. And that like really was the birth of oomé. Was really trying to like solve that piece of creating that accessible, really delicious, flavor-packed smoked tofu. And the original one was our Just Smoke, really to fill that void for our children. But we launched with maple soy, which is our fan favorite. It's a little bit of maple and gluten-free soy sauce. And then we have a Greek, which is almost like a vegan version of a marinated feta that you can toss in salads and Mediterranean dishes. And now we have our habanero honey, which really came about from just consumer feedback. But that's the origin story. I'll stop there.
Yeah, I mean, first off, sorry about that, and it's really great that you've been able to honor him in that way with building out oomé. From a perspective, I guess when you initially were looking to launch out, were there already any smoked tofu brands across North America, or was there nothing like that kind of in the market, at least in CPG per se?
So Sunrise, which is actually a pretty significant manufacturer here in Canada, at least, they have a smoked tofu, and I think now they have even a sriracha smoked tofu. But so they have a smoked tofu, but for that period during the pandemic, we could not find it anywhere for whatever reason, and so that like really was the piece that kind of pushed me to start to launch this. But texture wise, I would say we're a little bit different, and everybody has their preference. So they have a little bit of a rind around the outside of their tofu. It's a much more firmer texture, and we're almost like a smoked cheese, like a little bit more tender, and we don't have a rind around the edges, which I find my children really favor. And I find when we're doing demos, kids are very much gravitating towards the texture. So there is that one. And really, when it comes to Canada for smoked tofu in the traditional sense, that's kind of the only product out there for smoked tofu.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I guess, a lot of, our audience tends to be a lot of CPG founders that have actually either launched a brand the last 2 years, or they're looking to launch something, looking for ideas, or looking to, hopefully launch something soon. A lot of them tend to go towards the dry section where they know they don't have to deal with any kind of refrigeration or any of that as such. What are the challenges that people don't talk about with a product like tofu? Because I'm sure it's not exactly the large shelf life, refrigerated. And as I'm talking, your reactions are
So many
telling me.
challenges. Yeah. I mean, hindsight's 2020, and you could never have told me that I would be, in the business of smoked tofu. So I'm learning as I go, and I did not have a CPG background whatsoever. So I'm learning that, frozen might be a little more challenging, but being in a perishable fresh category is extraordinarily difficult. You're right for all of the reasons you mentioned. There is a shorter shelf life. When it comes to shipping and freight, you have to maintain a cold chain. So our product has to remain between 1 and 4 degrees. Any colder, it freezes. Any warmer, it gets rejected at the dock. And that is something that we're responsible for maintaining. And then I would say, yeah, shelf life is definitely much shorter, but the real estate, I think, is the hardest part. With a chip company, I have mentors that are more in the dry good category, and they could do like a truckload deal and have many different displays all around the store. And if it sits for a little bit longer, they have a longer shelf life. It's not a huge deal. For us, we can't, like, it would be a disservice to ourselves and to our customer to push more product than the store can handle, because then we're going to encounter shrinkage that looks bad for us because it's poor on our numbers, it's poor on that store's numbers, and, like, we don't want food waste anyway. So there are just so many challenges that we're always having to balance between really trying to push those sales, but also make sure they're realistic, and we know that the store can handle that inventory. Yeah,
Yeah,
lots to
definitely.
think about.
Well, that's the thing. But I guess do you see any the flip side? Do you see any advantages to being in that space that people don't really talk about? Because as an outsider, I'm looking at that and I'm like, wow, those are like 5 different headaches that I don't want to take on. So I guess what would you say some maybe the advantages that people don't see?
Think the flip side is that, so we self manufacture, but we are constantly turning product. We're not holding inventory because it is such a short shelf life. It's also something where, maybe for vegan consumers or people that are regularly consuming tofu products, it's just constantly being pulled off the shelf. So we do see more significant turn versus the category like sauces, I think, are actually very challenging because how often do you go through a bottle of sauce in the fridge? Like, I have a lot of different hot sauces. I love them, but maybe once a year I'm going to replace my hot sauce. So in terms of when we think about the turns, and being a fresh product, we definitely see that we're able to just like move our product. We can move inventory fairly quickly. So that is a huge plus, I will say. Like, we get regular orders, and it's nice to see product turning.
100%. I mean, I look at my own tofu consumption. I mean, I'm probably having a block once every 2 or 3 days. So like let's say it's 3 blocks a week, and I'm going to my Sobeys, and
Totally.
I'm part of that velocity of that Sobe store that's churning out tofu basically.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Hmm.
Exactly. And one thing, so you mentioned that manufacturing is in-house. Was that a decision right from the start to bring manufacturing in-house, or what was the thought process behind that?
Right. So we bring in the raw tofu, I should say. Like, we bring in the raw tofu, and then we like to say that we add value to it by marinating and smoking everything in-house and doing that final packaging. And it wasn't, I that was all self-taught. And then when we decided we needed to scale, it was really at that crossroads of, like, do we take this upon ourselves and learn how to build out a facility and self-manufacture, or do we outsource it? And we really looked at both because it's a huge undertaking to take on the self-manufacturing piece, but there are no vegan smokehouses. If we were looking at co-manufacturing, it would be partnering with, like sausage smokehouse, smoked salmon smokehouse. And when we looked at what that would involve, first of all, it's, the cross-contamination piece, it just doesn't sit very well. But also the minimum orders, they would have to clean out their entire smokehouse so that it was fit for a vegan product. That means that they would have to smoke a lot of product for us to be able to work with them. And so that was just a huge undertaking, and it didn't sit well. So we decided, like, okay, we're going to take this on ourselves, and we're going to build our own space out, and we'll move in baby steps so that it's manageable. But I think, we did that, and we haven't looked back since. It's been really great to be able to control every single piece of our product, and honor, like, the quality and the integrity of what we stand behind for our smoked tofu. So that's really how we arrived at that decision.
Yeah, definitely. And also another thing about your packaging, it's incredible. I mean, it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, like you guys put a very heavy emphasis on getting the packaging right per se. So kind of walk me through that, because I was blown away when I saw the packaging of the product.
Thank you. So I'm half Japanese. And the reason I bring that up is, growing up, we would take family vacations to visit family back home, my grandmother. And I just was always enamored with how everything was presented in Japan, like the merchandising and the marketing and the packaging. I'm a big fan of how we present ourselves to the world. And I would walk up and down, not just like the department stores, but the grocery stores too. Everything was always like really pristine. And that has always stayed with me. I really gravitate towards things that like stand out on the shelf. And then I'm curious about it and I'll buy it. And if I don't like it, then that's fine. But really, it's the packaging that I'm drawn towards. And I think more and more industry is paying attention to that, like how we present ourselves on the shelf. And Tofu just was not really playing that game. And so it felt like there was a real opportunity for us to present what I think is a really beautiful, delicious product and showcase it that way. And so I decided, when we were going to go into this business and really pursue it, that packaging was going to be a huge priority and we would invest in it. And I really think that that's part of what gave us a little bit of an upper hand and really developed some significant momentum is when we presented our product to customers, like the category managers, it really surprised them of, how we decided to go about presenting tofu and brighten up the set.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So I guess what would your advice be to like an outgoing founder when they're thinking about packaging? Are there one or a couple of rules or like a couple of I guess things they should keep in mind when they're, whether it could be a dry, perishable, it could be a bunch of different categories, but are there any, I guess, I don't know what the word is, but yeah, are there a couple of things that you would recommend that they follow?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because I don't have a CPG background, like this is kind of the first career where I've really leaned into listening to like your instincts and like that gut feeling of what you think would be the right decision. And so for this packaging, it really like sure, go to the store when you have a mock-up, line it up across the shelf, take a step back and say like, am I standing out? Do I fit? Am I too tall? Am I too short? Is it going to topple over? And these are things that we're still learning and still iterating on. But aside from that, I think like also just like listen to what feels right. Your instincts can take you a really long way. And we had a lot of people when I was designing our packaging, in a commissary kitchen, still tinkering with other much more seasoned food entrepreneurs. And they were like, why are you spending so much on packaging? Like, just make it slip through. No big deal. And it'll be cents on the dollar. For me, I was just like, I don't know. I kind of want to take a chance on this. I think that just felt right for me. And I'm really glad that I listened to my own instincts as opposed to industry norm. So I think sometimes you kind of have to go against the grain a little bit.
Yeah, 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 definitely, definitely. And in the end, I mean, you get the best tasting product, but if you're not able to get the consumer to actually try the product in the first place, then
Yeah,
that yeah, that's half the battle.
totally.
That's half the battle. Also, I guess with Ume, if I'm not mistaken, you have a more of a premium price point, let's say compared to the Sunrises or some of the other brands that are out there. I guess what was the decision behind going more premium on pricing, and what was that conversation like with the first retail buyers when you were going in with that price point per se?
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely are a more premium product. And I think at the end of the day, first of all, you have to price your product so you can survive in the business. Not that we're making a significant margin, like it's still incredibly, incredibly difficult. So that's the starting point. It has to be sustainable for the business. But we use really clean ingredients and we use premium ingredients. Our maple soy skew, it's Canadian maple syrup, it's gluten free, it's avocado oil. And so all of these pieces, they add up and we're really infusing the product with those premium ingredients. We also have the longest shelf life across the tofu category because we do a natural shelf life extension process that's really unique to our product. And so it's those types of little details that people are paying a premium price for, and that convenience that not only is the great ingredients, but like we're really offering a ready to eat, flavor packed, delicious, convenient smoked tofu that you could eat like straight out of the package. And we've had people reach out to us say like, I was really hungry on the way home from the grocery store. I tore it open and I ate it in the car. And so, yeah, for those reasons, that's why we are a premium product and we call for that price point.
And was that easy for the retail buyers at the start to accept that, or was there a little bit of convincing needed? I guess how was that? How was the first couple of conversations?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I think at the beginning, because we are a little bit above our competitors, it definitely is something that they have to stand back and consider. But I will say, from a business perspective, when we are calling for a premium price point, it means that there are more dollars that are going into that retailer's revenue as well. And so it's really a win-win when we're talking just like business talk. There are more dollars that are going towards their revenue channel as well. And so that's something that's enticing, I think. And we know from just having conversations with our customers, different grocery stores, that we're just adding to the category. We're not pulling away from other people that are already buying their tofus. We're just creating a wider category, and really enticing more people to try smoked tofu or tofu in general that they've been curious about, but just have been a little bit intimidated by. We're trying to just create that more approachable product so that people try it.
Yeah. And it's a great point that in the end, it was a win-win situation where you were framing the conversation from that perspective compared to a lot of founders. They'll go into those first couple of conversations and they're scared. But in the end, the point is that they want to increase, the store wants to make more sales. You want to make more sales. You're both aligned on that, so that's a
Totally.
great point. Yeah.
Yeah. And the
I guess
conversation gets easier once
exactly,
you get
exactly.
the first few. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. And I guess were there any objections at the start, or what were some of the objections? I guess when you were talking to your first couple of retail buyers, and I'm guessing up till now as well. Like, what kind of comes up for you guys?
Yeah, it's always, we always have our eyes set on the next retailer, and sometimes it's a years long conversation. So we're still up against those challenges. I would say as of late, like the packaging has really given us a great opportunity to get to where we are right now. And now, as we are looking more towards conventional retailers, the feedback is different. Like, we don't have a window in our package. And that's something that we're really thoughtfully considering. Should we have a window so that people can understand like what the product looks like before committing to it? And maybe changing a little bit of like the font size so that smoked tofu stands out a little bit more and the flavor takes a step back. So those are pieces of feedback that we get, and we really do take that feedback seriously. We're always iterating. When the challenges between our neighbors down south started, like, the maple leaf in the top corner started to pop up, because we want to make sure people know like we are a proudly Canadian product. So all of these pieces of feedback are constantly taken into consideration.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. And I guess when you initially started, it was in BC, and then from there you expanded into other provinces. Yeah,
Yes, yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So kind of
Yeah.
walk us through like the Ontario expansion. Because it's a refrigerated product with of course, lower shelf life and all that. I guess how did that kind of go through? How did you make sure you execute on that to success, basically?
Right. Yeah, it definitely is a risk too, and we are a big country. So when I decided that I was going to start to tackle Ontario, and really it's like BC largely, and then the next big phase is typically Ontario, and then you kind of fill out the middle provinces in between that journey. And so it really was, I was part of an accelerator program with Y Space and having conversations with some mentors there, and really seeking some advice, learning about like what are some local distributors in Ontario that could be a good fit. So having those conversations and understanding like who could we partner with? We needed a distributor. There's just no way that you can do direct with a perishable product like ours on such small orders as well. And then really identifying like what are the retailers we're going to start with? What are some of the local independent favorites of the Ontario community or the Toronto community that people go to? Big carrot, sweet potato, and so on and so forth, and really just understanding what that might look like. So it's always like the chicken before the egg type of like, do you get the distributor first or do you line up the retailers first, and how does it all come together? But I think like if you can land one anchor account, and you've already demonstrated success in your own backyard, then that gives the distributor some faith that like we'll be able to grow out the business in that next. And so we're with Purity, formerly known as Horizon here in BC, is our distributor, and they have a sister distributor that was formerly known as ONFC in Toronto. So we partnered with them, and then reached out to several local retailers, and sold cold emails and phone calls, and just like selling it into each store one by one. And then exhibiting at CHFA is really such a great opportunity to put face to it. And then driving around the city and doing those you have to do all of it. Store visits and checking on things and introducing yourself. All of that happens.
100%. And I guess with distributors, what is a misconception that you think people tend to have when it comes to bringing on a distributor?
I think one of the big misconceptions is that the distributor will sell your product into the store. Like once you get a distributor, a lot of industry friends, that are just starting out, they'll think like, if I just get that distributor, they've got access to these hundreds of retailers. I'm golden. That's where brokers come into play, and brokers are incredibly expensive. We don't have a broker. And, if you want the support of somebody that's going to sell your product in, that's typically the role of a broker. The distributor is really your delivery channel to get your product from A to B. They order a whole bunch, and then the distributor is housing it, and then they fan it out to each and every single one of those grocery retail stores. And they're occasionally, maybe it'll sell into a store, but it's really not the role of the distributor. They are distributing your product, and they're not selling it into new retailers. So that's really still, it's still my responsibility, and it's the responsibility of a broker in partnership with the brand to do that work.
Yeah, 100%. And that's, I think, yeah, a misconception that I've seen a lot of people tend to have is where they're like, they get the distributor and then they're like, they celebrate and they're like, my work's done. I'm like, oh, your work's actually started at this point.
I wish. Yes. Yeah.
I do want to talk, Miki, about, you know, you're running this company with your partner in the end. You both have, of course, different
Yes.
roles within the company. That is something that, of course, can have advantages, disadvantages, can have a bunch of different, factors to it. I guess, what are some of the, I guess, advantages that you see in this, and what are some things you have to be a bit careful about as well, and as a couple running a company together?
Absolutely. We hold very, very different roles. And I think that is, one of the keys to working together is to be very distinct in what you do. So 3 months into launching Oomé, I was just so overwhelmed and like way in over my head. Operations is not my strong suit, and he's great at operations. And so Santa was also feeling a little bit restless with what he was doing. He was an engineer. He was working at an indoor ag tech growing facility in R&D. Lots of really great skills that he had already acquired under his belt that he could transfer over to really growing Ume. And so he took on operations, really growing and scaling and becoming efficient with how to grow production, supply chain, dial down our cogs. All of those pieces are like what he really excels in, what I don't excel in. And for me, like I was able to really focus on growing our business development, being the face of the brand, sharing our story, building a relationship with our community, supporting our social media, taking accelerator courses, and understanding different areas of the business that are completely opposite to that. So I would say like that's really what has allowed us to grow Ume like in parallel together. But we are also partners in life, and we have 2 kids, and we come home at the end of the day. And for me, I think he's a little better at it, actually. It's really hard to separate home life from business life. Like at the dinner table, I have to like try really hard not to be like, did you see that email pop up? Like, what are we going to do? How are we going to answer it? And when the kids go to bed, the laptops open up and we're still working. So there is a lot of overlap, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. But the one thing I guess though is that in the end, with co-founders, a lot of time there are things that you don't understand about each other, but it's personalities or whether it's, yeah, I'm guessing as a couple, you understand each other's personality already so much, so then you're able to understand each other's strengths and weaknesses as within a business as well, per se.
Yes, I think so. And I think like, there's so many highs and deep, deep lows with this business, but most of the time we're able to counter each other. Like when I'm having a real low, he's a little more optimistic about what's happening. And when he's like, oh my gosh, I'm like, I think we're gonna figure it out. So that tends to help as well. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm always like interested when someone with a completely different background, gets into CPG. From what when I was doing my research, I think you were in public policy before coming into
Yes.
this. So I guess, were there any skills or any, I guess, yeah, skills that transferred on from that you felt into Ume, running Ume?
Yeah. So I think like the biggest thing, so my background, my education was in psychology, and I went all the way up through to doing a PhD and dissertation. And what I find really fascinating about that journey is that with a dissertation, like you come up with a thesis and then you have to bring it to life and you have to prove it, and and you have to be really determined and disciplined. It's like a self-paced sort of a project when you're at that stage. Starting a CPG business is no different. Like a lot of people have amazing ideas, but it's, the ones that are in this industry have executed on it. They have brought this concept that's in their mind all the way through to life, and it's like a physical product that they have proven. and that they are disciplined and self-determined to bring to life. So for me, like that was the real sort of transferable skill that I find a lot of parallels in.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in the end, like, yeah, as an entrepreneur, there's no real 9 to 5 or a structured kind of approach to it. The tasks never end, as you mentioned. Post dinner, you still have your laptops open. You're trying to, figure stuff out.
Exactly.
So yeah, but this is great, Miki. I do want to ask though at the end of our conversation. Normally, we like to ask this one question, which is that actually before getting to that, I want to ask like, what is the kind of the future for oomé? Is it new markets, new like expanding the U.S., more stores? Kind of where do you kind of see the next steps for you guys?
Yeah, we're really excited about the future of Ume. I think first and foremost is really just to fill out our backyard. So focus on Canada. We still have lots of room to play and to grow here in within Canada. I think Eastern Canada, there's still so much potential for us to grow into new retailers, working on different flavors, working on line extensions. So there's always lots on the go. And we're really excited about that. Not to say, for me, I think that there's huge opportunity down south, and that's definitely something that'll be in the cards over the next few years. So we would love to see ourselves available in the US as well at some point.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. And yeah, last question we always like to ask at the end is that what do you wish you had known on the first day of starting Ume? You wish you could go and tell yourself.
Think it's really like to have faith in yourself. There's so much imposter syndrome that a lot of us feel and continue to, but it's really like there's always going to be something new to learn and to just become comfortable with being uncomfortable like all the time. There's so much growth that happens and it's a really fulfilling journey to like overcome an obstacle and then like be on the other side of it and be like, okay, we figured that out. Like it is manageable. And so I think like that terrified person that was driving to the commissary kitchen, not even knowing how to use a dishwasher that day and like afraid to talk to people. It just like it'll work out. Yeah.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. No, that's really inspiring, and yeah, looking forward to seeing Ume continue to grow, and I'm looking forward to trying the product myself this weekend. And yeah, Miki, this is great. Thank you so much. Please also let the audience know where they can find Ume, where they can reach out to you as well.
Absolutely. So you can find us in a number of retailers, Whole Foods, Save On Foods here in BC, Safeway, Thrifties out east. You can find us at Metro and Longos. And then, we're pretty active on Instagram at This Is Ume. So yes, please reach out anytime.
Definitely, we'll link the Instagram and also the store locator as well in the show notes. Um,
Awesome.
and yeah, Miki, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.